Chapter 8: The Whale Hunt. April arrived with excitement in the air for the village. It was the month of the whale hunt, the highlight of the year. The days rapidly grew longer and the sea ice began to shift. Large cracks opened and then quickly closed without warning, making it dangerous for any but the most experienced hunters to be out. When the wind shifted to the south, the pack ice began to move. Immense flat icebergs, some of them miles across, floated past the island. The walrus returned, and hunters now found an abundance of food for the village. Huge bowhead whales, some weighing up to 80 tons and measuring more than 80 feet long, began their annual migration north through the Bering Sea. The hunters carefully prepared their 26-foot walrus skin boats for hunting. They had constructed the framework of the boats from driftwood and stretched walrus skin over it. The skins were sewn with sinew, making the boats very strong, yet flexible. Each boat had its own seasoned crew. Grandfather, the most skilled and experienced hunter in the village, was captain of the boat, and father was his harpooner. 8 other men who rowed the boat made eager preparations for the hunt. The old men of the village sat on the rooftops, watching not only the ever-changing weather, but also scanning the sea for telltale spouts that signaled the presence of migrating whales. Yuki was filled with excitement because grandfather had promised him that this year he could go along on the hunt. The boy kept close to the village where he could watch the elders on the rooftops. Late one afternoon, as he walked home from school, he noticed an unusual amount of activity on the beach. When he ran home to talk to grandfather, he wasn't there. Dashing out to the beach, he found grandfather's crew making preparations to leave. Grandfather's usually quiet voice was full of excitement. "Get your things, Yuki, and come quickly. Don't forget your rain suit. Now hurry, don't delay." Yuki raced back to his home and grabbed his essentials, a water bottle, a spear, and his knife. On the way, he picked up his rain suit, made of walrus intestines. It was completely waterproof, and yet air breathed easily through the tiny pores of the material. At the beach, Yuki watched the men prepare the buoys. Each had been made of a complete seal hide, sewn shut and sealed to make a float that looked like a balloon with legs. The men attached long ropes to the buoys and stored them carefully in the bottom of the boat. The day was beautiful, sunny and calm as they paddled out toward the open water. All the boats stayed within sight of each other for safety. The captain of each craft stood at the stern, guiding his boat through the maze of icebergs. Harpooners waited in the bow of the boats, looking for the telltale spouts of the traveling whales. Yuki sat in the center of grandfather's boat, huddled between the hunters who bent to their task of paddling the vessel. Hour after hour they traveled farther and farther into the sea, far from the village. Whale hunting among the Eskimos is an art handed down for generations that requires great skill and cunning. Grandfather had spent a lifetime learning about the habits of the whales and how to hunt them. He guided the boats to the area of the whales' feeding grounds. Then slowly and silently they approached the area where the whales might be found. Whales dive to great depths to feed on plankton, tiny sea creatures. A whale's huge mouth gathers in thousands of gallons of water full of plankton. Then, with a great whoosh of the whale's large tongue, pushes the water through the baleen, long plates that grow from the roof of the whale's mouth. They let the water out, but keep in the plankton. A bowhead whale doesn't have teeth, but on the inside of its mouth it may have as many as 300 long black strainers arranged in rows. They may range in length from 1 foot to more than 12 feet. A whale can eat as much as 2,000 pounds of plankton at a feeding, but must occasionally come up to the surface to blow or breathe. When feeding below, a whale generally rises to the surface in the same location to blow. Suddenly, from the lead boat, Yuki saw the signal. Whales! The captain spotted a herd or pod of whales at a traditional feeding ground far in the distance. When the hunters were more than a mile away, they set aside their paddles and hoisted a small sail. The men scanned the area where the whales were blowing. Then silently they approached the area. They must not make a sound. Even a paddle scraping on the side of a boat or a cough would alert a whale's sensitive hearing, and it would dive under the water. Closer and closer the boats drifted. Yuki's father stood as motionless as a statue, leaning far over the front of the boat with his harpoon poised ready for the strike. No one dared move. Yuki hardly breathed. Then a whale surfaced within yards of the boat. It looked huge, but they had to let it get closer since it must surface right under or next to the boat for the strike of the harpoon to be effective. Time passed. 15, 20 minutes. Then the whale rose beside the boat. Now, yelled grandfather. And with a mighty lunge, Yuki's father drove the large harpoon deep into the back of the whale. With a twist and a yank, he pulled back on the harpoon, leaving its head buried in the whale's blubber. The whale, with a mighty thrust of his tail, dove for the safety of the deep water. Rapidly, the rope unwound from the floor of the boat, its end tied to the buoys. Then, at the right moment, and with a great heave, a boatman threw the sealskin buoys into the water and deftly moved aside as they were pulled under the water. Yuki watched grandfather intently until the old man gave the signal for the boat to follow in the direction the whale had vanished. The boy knew that the whale cannot swim to the safety of deep water with the buoys constantly pulling it to the surface. All eyes of those in the boat scanned the placid surface of the water. Then a boatman scanned the placid surface of the water. Then a boatman pointed excitedly to the buoys rushing toward the north. The men took their paddles and fell to the task of following the receding buoys. Even Yuki grabbed a paddle and took a place along the side of the boat. His arms ached as he paddled as hard as he could. Each man knew his task. Mile after mile, the whale led them farther north in the Bering Sea. The other whaling boats vanished behind them. Intently they pursued the mighty giant of the deep. Weary hours later they spotted the whale resting on the surface. Again a cautious approach and a thrust of one more harpoon with an additional set of sealskin buoys, then followed another chase further out into the open sea. By this time, the little walrus skin boat had traveled many miles from the island. Yuki looked around the horizon from time to time, but saw nothing except a vast expanse of icy water. He glanced at grandfather, who was standing in the back of the boat with a worried look on his face. Yuki followed his gaze to the southwest, and what he saw also made him uneasy. Angry clouds were racing across the sea toward them. Grandfather ordered the sail furled, and within minutes the storm swept over them. Heavy waves whipped the side of the boat, and the blinding snow, driven by the high winds, pushed them ever further away from the island. Yuki struggled into his rain gear. He must not get wet, because to get soaked under these conditions meant chilling cold and death. For hours the storm hurled the boat along. Everyone forgot the whale as they fought for their lives.